Hello, and welcome back to Cinematic Journeys, where we're taking a look at Cabin Fever. Boy, has my view on this film changed. I don't think it's a terrible movie. I don't think it's a great movie. It's okay. But when I first watched this, I thought it was a good movie. My views have changed. I don't think it's terrible, but there are some things. Some things that they could change. This movie is written, directed, produced, and has a cameo from Eli Roth. I think this was his first film. It shows, and much like Rob Zombie, he should not be allowed to write his own films. Because the dialogue in this film is horrendous. You got people shouting out expletives and being assholes to each other. At one point, Bert, one of our characters, so our main characters, it's 5 friends who go out to a cabin in the woods, because that always turns out right. Their names are Jeff, Marcy, Karen, Bert, and our main character is Paul. He's Sean from Boy Meets World, but his name is Paul. Also, Marcy is Serena Vincent from Power Rangers Lost Galaxy and Not Another Teen Movie, where she also did nudity in that movie. She did nudity in this movie. And then she stopped because she didn't want to be typecast. Of course. But she's a beautiful woman, let me tell you. Man, gorgeous. Anyway, so these 5 friends, they're going on a trip to a cabin. I don't know if they ever say why, like where they got the cabin from. It's just a cabin, I guess. So they get there and they find this homeless man who has some kind of a skin disease that infects them, and they slowly start to become infected. Yeah. So like I said, the dialogue. There's a scene where Bert, he has a shotgun, and they ask, what are you going to do? I'm going to go shoot squirrels. Why are you going to shoot squirrels? Because they're gay? Who would write that? You need someone to actually write. Like, the writing in this film is horrible, to be honest. There are several things that happen in this film that leave you going, it's like that Jackie Chan meme where he goes, because you just don't know why they made this decision. So, point of instance here. First of all, they go to this general store, right? And they get this shot of them driving all the way around to park by the store. But they could just pulled up and parked. But they go all the way around to park in front of it. Okay. And then they go in and stuff. Paul sits next to this little kid named Dennis. He's like, put it there, sport. And the kid bites him. The dad comes out and he blames Paul, saying, everybody knows you don't sit next to Dennis. They didn't know that. They couldn't have known that. They're new there. They've never been there before. It's not the last time he'll blame them for something too. And when we get to that just baffles me how they come to that conclusion. But we'll get to it. So they go and they party, party man. They go to the cabin, they show the cabin. The first thing that Jeff and Marcy do when they get there is have sex, of course. I do like that really made me laugh. It was like no one can interrupt us. And then the first thing is Paul, hey, who's ready for a dip? And he's like, oh. And they're like, okay, never mind. And he goes to leave and he's like, hey, Paul, have fun. And then as they get to go back to doing it again, you see Bert with the binoculars. He goes, that made me laugh. And then Bert makes me go, first of all, he decides to start a fire in a ring of fire around the firewood, which, unless you spray gasoline around there, wouldn't work. and he has the shotgun. And so this film actually starts off with this homeless guy and his dog, and he finds the dog has been eaten from the inside by something that's the skin disease, which we'll come back to because the way it affects this dog and another dog kind of doesn't make sense, because they don't affect the same way, and we're gonna get to that. So, yeah, he showed the homeless man shows up. He's all messed up, and Bert, instead of asking what happened, shoots at him, telling him to go away because he's infected with something. Every time someone comes across someone who's infected, they act like assholes, because that's what these characters are. Instead of trying to help them, he shoots at them, tells them to go away. It's happening again later. So, they decide to have a fire when they are approached by a man known as Grim. He's played by a writer, director, producer, Eli Roth. Ooh, face! Scratch Modi. That's where we get that line. And he's got his dog, Dr. Mamba. That's when they're like, do you have a PhD? Oh yeah, he's a doctor. Of being a dog? Ooh, face. Like, no, that doesn't make any sense. And they're like, okay, we don't want you to be here. And he's like, well, I got weed. And they're like, well, hey, come back. They do that, and then he leaves, saying he's going to come back. He never comes back. And we find out later, he was infected somehow. And during this, they make a bet that they can only drink beer between Jeff. I think it's just between Jeff and Bert. And they make a deal they can only drink beer. So that's going to come into handy later. Coming back later. On the next night, the homeless guy comes back, recognizes Bert, and goes off, hey, man, you shot at me, and stuff. And he's like, man, there's something wrong with him. Instead of trying to help him, they yell at him and come at him with bats and whatever, and he's like, you know what, like, fuck this, I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna take your vehicle, and I'm gonna drive off. But there's no keys in that vehicle, and he gets in there, and he spews up. Now, there's a question here, because what we find out, at least in the third one, is that, well, they change it by then, is that the infected become sentient zombies of sorts. And it's possible that at this point, he could just be trying to affect other people and not really wanting help. I don't know. They find out that Karen is infected when Paul goes to finger her, comes up with blood. Yeah, oh, she's just on a period, but then they show that she's infected. Yes, I'm talking about this and I'm itching. Sorry. And yeah, so she's infected and they put her in a shed. Again, instead of going to get her help, they just put her in a shed and hope this is going to go away. Paul is now infected too because he fingered her. And Jeff decides, fuck this. I'm not going to have anything to do with this, and he takes off. Bert is also infected because he was in contact, I think, from cleaning the car. I think he got infected. And there's filler in this. There's a lot of filler. Like, there's a scene where Paul and Jeff go to get help at a neighbor, and they find this woman. But then it doesn't go anywhere because they find out she's related to the homeless guy, and they take off. Then there's another scene where Paul goes to find help, and he finds a naked woman, a woman undressing, and then finds her husband, who freaks out and runs him off. There's also a scene where Paul finds the homeless guy in the water reservoir for the town, and then, while trying to figure out if it is him, he falls in, which doesn't amount to anything because he's already infected. He has sex with Marcy, which infects her, and then she has a B8 bullshit scene where she decides to shave her legs in the middle of an infection. What? Why? And then we get Dr. Mambo, who is not infected just like the other dog, but instead has gone rabid because of the disease, which makes no fucking sense at all. Unless, if you connect just to the third one, which is a prequel, They become like sentient zombies. What if it affected, Dr. Mambo that way and not the other dog? Who knows? But it still doesn't make any sense. They just wanted the dog to go nuts, but it just doesn't make any sense to me. And Paul also finds Grimm's body, because I think he was mauled by Dr. Mambo. I don't know. Then he attacks Karen, who's in a shed, mind you, but somehow the dog gets in, attacks her and bites up her face, so Paul has to kill her. And I haven't yet mentioned Deputy Winston, played by Giuseppe Andrews, fucking party man. He shows up in the middle of this film, responding to a 911 call. He's like, "It's okay, just go back inside, have yourself a 40, just party." And he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna bring in a tow truck, man. You're gonna have a lot of parties." Just like, man, shut up. Just shut up. The fucking party man. And then he doesn't call the tow truck, and Paul, very infected by this time, shows up at this party. And now I remember I said that there might be some sentience to infecting people. So he starts spitting up the water, spitting up the blood and stuff. But I think that was to freak them out, to get them to run away. And then he can, because Winston's clearly not going to go anywhere if there's a party. So I think he's like spit up the blood to make them run off. And then he can like get Winston. And there's this awkward shot where Winston is like, "Oh, you fucked the fucking party, man." And he's like, "Shut up, Winston." And he hits him. But Winston is like this. And he hits him. And when we see Winston next, he's laying on his back. That doesn't make any sense. If he hits someone like this, he's going to fall forward, not back. I don't know. Meanwhile, Bert makes his way back to the general store to get help because he's the only one left because Jeff ran off. So, Bert, I mentioned that Paul and Marcy had sex. I think I did. Yeah, because I said Jim. Okay, never mind. So, Bert makes his way back to the general store where he encounters Dennis again, who starts yelling. He says, "Hey, can you get my friends need some help, please?" And the guy goes in, and then Dennis starts yelling, "Pancakes! Pancakes! Pancakes!" Which does kind of get answered in the remake, sort of. But then he does his kung fu moves, and he bites Bert. And this is where we get the biggest bullshit in this film. Something written so that they can have a mob of rednecks coming after them. Dennis bites Bert, and so he's now infected. The store manager, who is Dennis's father, says, "Now why'd you have to go and do that to Bert? Now you got my boy sick. That's the same as killing him. That's murder." No. See, it's not Bert's fault at all. Bert came to you. He asked for help. You went in to call someone, and your son, of his own volition, bit Bert. Bert had nothing to do with it. He was actually trying to stop him, and he got bit. Bert is the victim, not Bert is the victim here. Alright? Bert is the victim. But we gotta make everyone look like assholes, right? So, it's Bert's fault, I guess. But Bert was just trying to get help. Dennis bit him. So it's not Bert's fault, it's Dennis's fault. But yet, they can say that that's technically murder. And they decide to go and go after him. And then Bert ends up dead, of course. And it's all Paul who's left. Paul gets taken to the hospital after getting... There's another point in this scene, too, where he's driving. He takes a a truck or something, and he's driving and he hits a deer, which is not really necessary. And then he gets taken to the hospital. He tries to explain what's going on. They act all weird, even though they know that there's a sickness going on. Like, where did he get it from? And he's like, homeless man. And I couldn't understand what he was saying after that, but he's rattling on something. And they look at him like he's crazy, and then say, well, call Winston to get rid of him. And what does Winston do? He throws him in the water. What? We're gonna have he even tries to tell him, water. Water. Oh, I ain't got a water, man. I just got a 40. You want some water? I'll get you some water, man. Oh, we're gonna have big fucking parties, man. It's a fucking party, man. It's like, shut up. There's only so much fucking party, man, I can take, okay? So the next day comes, and this is where we get a scene that, if you're thinking about it, actually kind of works better in the remake with the context of what we have with the dialogue and the characters. But, so, here, Jeff wakes up from his beer coma in the woods. He comes back, everyone else is dead, and he's praising that he survived, he did it, and then he gets shot. He gets shot. And this is supposed to be a moment of sympathy for Jeff, because he's the only one that survived, the only one that wasn't infected, and this is supposed to be a moment of sympathy. The only problem is, he's been an asshole for this entire film. They all have. The only one that really could garner sympathy is Paul, because he's been the least asshole person in this film. But he's still an asshole. So this draws no sympathy at all, because you can't sympathize with someone who's been an asshole the entire film. Yes, he survived and he's shot. It doesn't make any sense, but it's basically a callback to Night of the Living Dead. Shoot first, ask questions later, and they burn it up. And we cut to, by the way, forgot to mention, beginning of this film, they go in and we meet what people have been come to call racist Santa Claus. Even though he's not racist. So he's in there, he's this hillbilly, white-bearded, bushy-bearded guy, kind of doesn't like this. And they're asking questions. What's the fox you're in for? Fox hunting. And they go, well, what's that for? And points to a shotgun. Oh, that's for N-words. It's for N-words, he says. And they're like, oh. But I think that's one of the only legitimately funny things in the film, is that it comes back later and he's actually friends with the African American black people. And the gun was for them. He gives them the gun. So the gun was for them. And he does say, what's up, man? You know. But we're in the context of earlier in the film, you hear him say that. It's like, oh, you know, but, you know, yeah, overall, bad dialogue, there's a blood and gore, but not a lot of this film makes sense. It's not a terrible film, but I can't bring myself to make it a great film. It's not a fry in hell, but I'll give it a middle of the road. It's a 5. A middle of the road, a 5 for me. So, yeah. What are your thoughts on Cabin Fever? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I've been Scotty, and I'll see you in the next one. Wait a minute, don't go. Don't go. Because I bet you're going to ask, Scotty, are you going to do the sequels? You bet your ass I am. Hold on. My nose is itching. I am going to do the sequels. But because of the way I'm doing this, because this one has to be a cinematic journey, the other ones I'm just going to spread out between the next 3 days. Tomorrow, I will have a review for the second film. To Be Tuesday will be the review for Patient Zero, which is the prequel, and I'm pretty sure it's still on this. I hope it is. And Wednesday, along with your Wild Card Wednesday, which is now changed. I did a drawing off camera because I just don't have interest in watching Waterworld. I'm sorry. So I did a redraw off camera. It's Total Recall, so look for that. But also I will give you the remake. Actually, it's gonna be a original versus remake because I cannot talk. It is so much shot for shot that all I could do is talk about the differences, and that's just original versus remake. So that's what you're gonna get. So yeah. So yeah, after all that, let me know in the comments below what you think of Cabin Fever. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I've been Scotty, and I'll see you in the next one.